want to purchase more than is available. If there's 300,000 pounds available, consumers want to purchase 500,000 pounds, it suddenly disappears from the shelf. You're expecting it to last a couple of days. By 10 in the morning, it's gone. That's the so-called shortage. So what happens when the market has a shortage, it disappears very quickly. The businessmen say, hey, it's going very rapidly, I can raise the price. And as they raise the price, the shortage begins to disappear, finally back up to the equilibrium point. Now this is very fast, and again, it's because of the motivation, if the price is free to move, the motivation is to make profits and avoid losses, and you get then to the price which clears the market. Now the supply and demand are exactly equal, where people want, if there are 200,000, 300,000 pounds of peaches available, people want to buy 300,000 pounds. Exact clearance of the market. Supply and demand are equilibrated. One reason for the word equilibrium. And this, the higher price, supply is greater than demand, so you have the surplus. The lower price, demand is greater than supply, so you have a shortage. And what the free price movement does is wipes out surplus and shortages as soon as they appear. You never have on the free market anything like a permanent surplus or a permanent shortage. Anything beyond a couple of days, pretty quick. If you do have a permanent surplus or permanent shortage, the government is always in there interfering with it. That's an iron law. All right, so this is sort of orthodox economists have a similar approach here, except if you notice the supply curve is vertical. The orthodox textbook approach, the supply curve is forward sloping, like that. The Austrian view of the supply curve is vertical, so you're dealing with a day-to-day situation. How much is there, and how much is there to the supply, how much do people evaluate it, and what way do people evaluate it on their value scales, that's the demand. So you have, in other words, things around, resources, goods, various stages of production, and people evaluating these things. Demand and supply interacting. Now these are the only two things that are going to affect prices, supply and demand. And again, go, I think, rapidly through this thing. Another reason for the word equilibrium is an analogy with physics and physical sciences, where an equilibrium is something which something tends to move toward and tends to go back to it if it's displaced from it. Okay, so it tends to stay in this particular spot and go back to it if it's displaced. So then the question is, the next question is, since we observe the prices change all the time, how come prices are changing? Why aren't they fixed? Why don't they stay frozen forever at this equilibrium point? Obviously because, only because either demand changes or supply changes or both. Right? Those are the only two ways in which prices can change. And so then, okay, then we have the familiar thing. Again, I guess everybody knows this, but at any rate, I'll zip through it. Stop me if you want to inject any comment or anything. As supply change, let's say the famous case I always think of, every few years the coffee freezes in Brazil, and the big frost, the coffee crop is destroyed or something, half of it disappears. This happened about 5 years ago, and then there's a big drop in the supply of coffee coming in. So supply curve shifts to the left. So this means that the old market clearing price, let's say before the last frost, the price of coffee is something like $1 a pound, something like that. Okay. And let's say it's $1. That was the market clearing price before the frost. Then the frost comes, wipes out half the coffee crop. It means that the old price is no longer market clearing, because now there's a big demand is very much greater than supply. Shortage develops, and therefore the price zips up to clear it. And as it clears it, you wind up with a higher equilibrium price. Another thing this shows is how price performs a so-called rationing function. In other words, there's only a limited amount, everything is scarce. There's not enough coffee for everybody to drink 10 cups of coffee every day in the world. And so somehow it has to be allocated. Somebody's going to get the coffee, somebody isn't. Somebody's going to get a certain amount. How is it allocated? The free market allocates it on the basis of individual choices, preferences. As the supply drops from 1 million pounds of coffee to 500,000, whatever it was, so cut in half, There's two ways of allocating the scarce supply. You have a government rationing committee. It says you, and you can only drink half of what you drank before. If you drink more than half, if you still drink the same amount, we shoot you, or whatever, moral equivalent. That's one way to do it. Totalitarian, evil, inefficient, everything. The free market is allocated smoothly and harmoniously, with each individual deciding his or her own basis. As the coffee price starts going up, those people who love coffee will keep either buying the same amount or cut their purchases only a little bit. Others, coffee is sort of marginal. They say, "Oh, well, I'm shifting to tea or shifting to cocoa or Pepsi or whatever." And that's exactly what happened, by the way. I think in the last coffee frost, people started shifting massive amounts, and you wind up with this kind of the lower supply allocated very smoothly to each individual choices at a higher price. Conversely, supply goes up due to better fertilizer or whatever, better agricultural techniques. And in opposite situations, at the old market clearing price is now a surplus. People don't want to buy that much coffee or whatever. And so in order to induce them to buy more, you have to cut the price. And as you cut the price, you wind up with an equilibrium price, which is lower. So this accounts for price changes on the supply side. That's, in a free market economy, a capitalist economy, usually the tendency is for most goods and services to increase in supply. Some a little bit, others a lot. So the tendency is toward falling prices. And for example, in the 19th century, which was a great century of industrial revolution, prices fell all the time except during wartime. And why it rose during wartime is another story. We'll get to that this evening. So the point is, without any interruptions or exogenous forces coming in from the government, prices tend to fall. Dramatic examples are TV, calculators, and computers. Yeah.
I was going to say personal computers.
Yeah. Yeah, go on, because I know less about personal computers than anybody in the room probably, and it's unbelievable. They keep falling every day. It's enormous. As supply increases, productivity increases, the whole thing just explodes. I remember a lower tech example is, when did the hand calculators come out? About 12 years ago or something? Well, less than 10 years? 8?
10 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's 12 years ago is right.
12 years ago. So I teach at engineering university, something like this, I guess. And a friend of mine on the EE department, electrical engineering department, ran into in the elevator. Even though we're high tech, we call ourselves an engineering center of excellence. The elevators never work. I was ranting engineering. Why didn't you have a field trip or something to fix these damn elevators? This is, of course, too low for them. That's done by other low types. At any rate, and when they do work, they're very, very slow. You go up 7 floors, it takes about 10 minutes. You have time for a lengthy conversation in the elevator. So I run into this guy in the elevator and he says, "Look, I got this magic thing. There's a fantastic new product out. Since I know the vice president of this firm, I have the first copy or whatever. It's this magic thing. You hold it in your hand, you press dots and so buttons, and it multiplies and divides like that. Fantastic. And it's only $400. So now we have a much better calculator for $18. It's enormous. Consider the inflation.
Or the one that does the same for $4.
$4?
We have, we have them built into little watches. And
fantastic.
Amazing.
Jesus, yeah. Consider the prices have gone way up since then. Doubled or tripled or whatever since then. It's unbelievable what the capitalist system can do when you give it its head.
And actually, within about 2 or 3 years, the price had dropped from $160, $170 to about $15, and it stayed around that range. You can get a decent handheld calculator at $15, but the features have increased.
Yeah, right. Quality goes up. Of course, again, this is homogeneous in a sense. You have to consider the unit quality. You can do it's very difficult to measure quality, obviously. But you have to consider if you're comparing prices over time. You have to consider the price per unit quality. And if the calculator is still $18, but you have a much better calculator, it's really much lower price per unit quality of the calculator. It's TV sets are another example. It's a lower tech and older example. TV sets first came out in 1949. They were $2,000, which is now, what is it, $7,000 or $8,000 in current money or something. For a crummy set, you couldn't see anything. It was murky. Of course, black and white, but also very murky and shadowy. There's only about two programs on anyway. And also, the first family, one family in each neighborhood had it. So everybody trooped in every night to watch Milton Berle or something. The big community. So now you have a situation where you have color television sets for $200 or $300, much infinitely better quality, unbelievable. With cable and everything, you can see everything. It's fantastic. Plus lots of programs and 45 channels or whatever. Plus everybody's got about 8 TV sets, including one in the bathroom, wristwatch TV, and everything else. So even people who are certified below the poverty level on welfare, lots of TV sets. So that shows again what happens with mass production and tendency toward lower prices.
Isn't that beautiful?
Fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
So at any rate, so a question you might ask, why do prices will keep going up? In general, I say tonight, we get to the macro part of it. But okay, so another thing here is that where does the cost come in this whole thing? The usual doctrine of businessmen, a lot of laypersons say that prices are determined by costs of production. This was Smith and Ricardo basically said that. Marshall and standard British classical economics and neoclassical coming down to the 1930s or so. If costs are higher, prices will be higher, vice versa. And where's the cost in here? You've already gotten the analysis. Is fine. I haven't talked about what happens with shift of demand. Okay, I forgot that, but it's pretty clear that if demand increases, you have an increased price for something. If demand drops, you have a lower price. And this, by the way, determines future resources. I should get into that before I get to costs. If you're given the money supply, okay, demand can only if somebody's out there printing money all the time, which of course is what's happening in real life, then all demand curves will rise because everybody's got more money in their pocket, and so every person will pay more money for the same. Will buy more at any given price. So you have a general floating upward demand curves. Aside from that, without that entering the picture, if the amount of money is fixed, you don't have this constant printing of money. People have a certain income. If they buy more on one thing, they have to buy less than something else. So demand curves will tend to shift around. According to consumer preferences and values, which change unpredictably anyway. So. The standard example back in the 1930s was that people shift from pork to beef as they get more affluent. Which is still true. In other words, somehow pork is considered low type. And so as people get higher living standards, they tend to shift from pork to beef. Okay? The proportion that they buy shifts. Okay? So then you have the pork market and the beef market. Right? And then that without any moral condemnation or approval can be made in this situation. Anyway, so then you have a situation where the demand for pork falls and the demand for beef goes up. And so and what you have initially is a demand, meaning how much people pay at any given price. Okay? And nobody knows exactly what it is, by the way. It's another key point the Austrians always make. Textbooks always say, here's the demand curve, here's the cost curve, and you grind down how much will be produced and the prices. Nobody knows what they are. In the real world, businessmen and entrepreneurs trying in the uncertain world, remember, entrepreneurship, trying to estimate, trying to find out what the demand curve is and what the costs are. It's like one of the key differences between Austrian economics and the Walrasians who are now dominating the economics profession. It says there in the textbooks, given the demand curve, given the cost curve, this is how much will be produced in generally equilibrium, which you haven't gotten to it yet. But the point is, given to whom? Nobody knows it. It's not given at all. The market is a process of trying to find out what's going on, and hopefully learning and adjusting the changes and so forth and so on. It's a very, very different kind of approach. Okay, so then there's a higher price for beef and lower price for pork initially, the reaction. Because, again, the old price, people don't want to buy as much pork. Surplus piles up. And so price has to fall, so people will be induced to buy the same amount of pork as they did before. The beef market, again, more people want to buy beef at any given price, and so the price of beef has to go up to eliminate this transitory shortage. Other more modern examples, since World War II, there's been a big shift in consumer preference from red wine to white wine. Enormous shift. So that which is part of the reason why California wines are not very big, because California reds are not too hot. California whites are just as good as French whites. So as preferences shifted from red to white, in the old days you only supposed to drink white with fish and chicken. Now people drink white with everything. So that means the California whites now become very big. And so the demand curve for white wine goes up, the demand curve for red wine goes down. Also what's happened is a tremendous shift in alcohol preferences out of bourbon, for example, into vodka. So in 1940, nobody drank vodka, except a few Russian emigres. And nowadays, vodka is enormous. So there's a big shift, and they're both the same toward so-called lightness. I guess heavy drinks and sort of light drinks. So again, you have an increased demand curve for vodka, drop the demand curve for bourbon. Now what happens then is this brings us down to production, which I haven't really gotten there. So far I've been talking about the given supply line, how much is available. We haven't talked about yet is who decides how much is going to be available. Who decides that there's going to be 200,000 pounds of peaches today, or 1 million loaves of Wonder Bread, or whatever? Well, producers have decided, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, depending on the technology and how long it takes to produce stuff. They decide on the basis of expectations, expected demand, what they think the demand will be, what they think the price will be, and what they think the cost will be. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Those who are right make profits, those who are wrong suffer losses. So what happens here is that the case of, let's say red wine and white wine is more interesting than pork and beef. Okay. Here there's the white people, and they say, well, they see that there's a big increase in demand for white wine, drop in demand for red wine. They have to figure out whether it's going to be permanent or not. Is it transitory? Is it will only last a couple of months because, I don't know, Kennedy likes white wine or whatever? They have to make a decision whether it's going to be semi-permanent or transitory. They make the decision, let's say it decides to be permanent. They turn out to be right. They start retooling. If they're smart, which they will be able to survive, they start increasing the production of white wine and reducing the production of red wine, or increasing the production of beef, reducing the production of pork. Different technological units, so some things take 2 weeks to retool, some things take 10 years. It depends on what you're producing. But what happens is over time, you will have an increase, a shift on the supply line to the right here. The response to the higher profits expected to be made because of the increased demand. And you wind up with something like this. So in the long run, you wind up with a price somewhere in between and greater production of white wine. And with red wine, you start shifting out of it, so the supply lines keep going to the left. You wind up somewhere in between over here. And this is a long-run response, okay, to changes in demand. So what happens is that this indicates one thing, for example, how production is a response to anticipated or expected demand on part of consumers. Consumers are the drivers of the engine. Okay? Producers are very anxious to figure out what consumers are going to buy next year, 10 years from now, whatever. And they move into the situation, if they think consumers want white wine heavily, they'll move into that and move out of red wine. Okay? If they're mistaken, they lose money. If they're correct, they make money. They make profits and lose money if they don't. Usually on the market, entrepreneurs tend to be pretty good at it, because otherwise they go bankrupt and drop out. It's sort of a law of survival of the fittest. So it's not necessarily happened. Sometimes you can make a lot of boo-boos. But basically, the tendency is for successful forecasters, entrepreneurs to do well, and they might remain in the market, and for unsuccessful ones to drop out. Okay, so at any rate, if you take the locus of any given shifts in demand, hypothetically, take this intersection, this long-run intersection point, you will get a line like that. This is the textbook supply curve, the forward-sloping supply curve. The reason why Austrian stressed the vertical supply curve is the longer supply curve is totally different. It doesn't belong in the same diagram, okay? Because time is involved here. It really needs 3 dimensions, right? They're different things. It's like apples and peaches. The demand curve is instantaneous. It's a freeze frame situation. At any given day, how much will be bought at different prices. And nobody knows exactly what they are, but we do know it's falling. That's what we know. We know that consumers will buy less at a higher price and more at a lower price. Supply curve at any given day is instantaneous. There it is. The stuff is there. The 300,000 peaches. Over the long run, this is how much will be evoked. So the demand curve keeps shifting, and price is such and such. This is how much will be supplied in the long run by white wine manufacturers, vice versa. So that's this thing is philosophically sloppy too. It has forward sloping, backward sloping. So two different things involved. See, the Austrian position focuses on not only has the correct axes for the correct time period. The Austrian position focuses on people subjectively evaluating goods and services which are there, ready for sale. This thing focuses on really nothing. So it doesn't focus on any of that. It becomes mechanical, it becomes mechanistic, it becomes removed from actual action. So that's. I've been talking about an hour now. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I was just glancing at your book, and you would have a vertical supply curve diagram, and right next to you have a positive supply curve diagram. And you have a lot of...
That's the locus. We have a whole bunch of little ones.
But that's useful too. It's just a different...
Yeah, it's useful to show that if you pay a higher price, you'll get more in the long run. More will be produced in the long run. It's not true, of course, for Rembrandts. Right? The supply of Rembrandts are fixed, frozen forever. I mean, nobody produces any more Rembrandts because Rembrandt is dead. Unless you have a perfect forger. Okay? Yeah.
One of the other faults of that type of diagram is the demand curve crosses the supply curve. Mislabeled as a supply curve.
Yeah.
So it doesn't allow for the different situations that you find in, like, some markets are much more volatile than others.
Exactly.
In a lot of things, so you have other ways that the price is determined. Like in many things, you have unique items. And in a unique item, if I don't have any great time preference, an upper bound on what I'm willing to pay is what I think I could produce another item for given time of the same sort. And a lower bound on what I'm willing to pay is my value of a nice return over future value of present value of future cash flow given this item. So I given, say I want to buy an apartment building. Well, then I'm probably unwilling to pay more than what I think I could put a similar apartment building up for. And on the other hand, I'm at least willing to pay a price that the cash flow will give me a, say, 20% return on my money. So I have some bounds on it. And then I also look at what similar apartment buildings have been bought for. But I think there's other measures of what you're willing to pay. Most of these things that you're talking about, the red wine, white wine, the beef, pork, are fairly non-business-like decisions. They're decisions. What will I do with my money? I've got to eat something tonight, so let's flip a coin. Who cares whether I eat beef or pork? It's just sort of they're decisions that are made on the sort of spur of the moment thing.
Why the spur of the moment? It might be or might not.
Well, it's maybe from the aspect of the consumer, but certainly not from the aspect of the seller of pork or the producer of pork.
He's going to anticipate.
But the demand is, the swing is, seems to me, right now, over the long run, I would hope that if the producers are rational, then the price of production does, in a sense, determine the supply.
Are you the cost of production?
The cost of
Well, see, the problem, okay, we haven't gotten the cost yet. It's the next step. Okay. We haven't gotten the cost. We haven't been talking about cost at all yet.
Yeah. One other point that really bothered me, why did you say that Austrian economists aren't valuable to business, or there aren't jobs for them in business? It seems to me that what business should want is two things: a rational view of the world, and two, the best possible tools that they can have for predicting future events. And if your view of the world is correct, then presumably it is also better than other views of the world at predicting future events. Therefore, you should be valuable to business, more so than somebody who's incorrect and bad predictor.
Look, economists can say, in economics, free market economists can say as follows: if the demand for white wine goes up, such and such will happen. Price will go up, and then more people, if entrepreneurs anticipate it and they think it's permanent, and it is permanent, there'll be more production. Okay? But we don't know whether white prices. We don't know anything about the demand for white wine. That's, we don't know. We have a formal set of tools here, and I don't think the entrepreneur needs that. I don't think. He knows that instinctively anyway. He knows that if people pay more for it, he'll be more profits and he'll go into it. What we're doing is essentially analyzing individual actions and entrepreneurial action. The way that Austrian economists are now valuable in a sense to businessmen because of government intervention. We can predict the results of government intervention. They can't. See, in a totally free market, we have no role at all. And now we can say, look, if there's price control, there's going to be a shortage, or if the money supply increases, there's going to be inflation. Okay.
I don't even buy that, because in a totally free market, you've got to keep it that way.
Yeah, of course. You have to fight to keep it.
Therefore, there's the education.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. We always have an educational function. I'm just saying, as a business, if you're employed by IBM or something, an economist, right now it's really, they're really employed because it looks good or ridiculous. It's cost tax deductible or something. But it's also because of this whole macro stuff, which really would wash out. I wouldn't say we have no role over it.
Seems to me the problem is that businessmen would rather have somebody who says he can predict, even if he predicts wrong, than an Austrian who says I can't predict.
Exactly.
So I can't do anything.
That's very true. That's very. This whole prediction business is very interesting.
Well, our discussion last night about altruism versus greed and grab and all that jazz. Right now, though, economists are employed in general in business to set a given pattern and then advise government on how to put that in place. Isn't that how they're working? In general, very general. For example, you take an industry like, what industry could I use? Well, accounting. We have some accounting group. Take an industry like the accounting practice, and an economist would say, okay, if all people were required to file income tax returns in a certain way, then we would provide the service of filling out income tax returns for them. We would limit the number of people who come into the market and so on and so forth. And they start with this given model and then conspire to or try to achieve the regulation that will put that model in place. Is that how economists work in the business world now? In general. I'm going to cry.
Let's put it this way. Economists have certain functions. Well, I'm not a business economist, but I know some. First of all, they write speeches for their chairman of the board and presidents.
Good.
That's all right. That's an important function. Usually speeches are pretty good. If you look at business, a friend of mine was an economist. He used to work for Business Week. The Economist for Business Week. No, excuse me, before business, he did work. But before that, he was working as a speechwriter for different corporations. He said, the speeches are great. They all sound hardcore free market. And actions, of course, are totally different from the same people. But this business speech is usually pretty good. So that's one thing economists do, they write speeches. But it's also sort of a PR function. We have an economist too, and he does such and such, and it looks good to the public, it looks good to the stockholders. There's also a problem with stockholder suits. There's lots of stockholders suing the management. And so the manager says, they cover their rear, so to speak, all right? We made this decision. We had a fleet of top PhDs who advised us on this. Okay, that's another function. All of this has a certain, begins to take on the dimensions of a racket. At any rate,
There was an article in Reason magazine.
Really?
The technocrats.
What?
Remember that one, the technocrats?
Say it again.
It was titled, look out, the technocrats are coming.
Technocrats.
People are trained in the university to be like this. And by the way, your worst example is the Economic Council of Canada, which is bank presidents, union leaders, heads of big companies, and they're appointed by, guess who? The Prime Minister. And they call these people economists.
Well, if you look at forecasting is a big profession now. There's enormous amount of money is made of economic forecasting. Okay? forecast, if you look at the forecast, they all say about the same things. GNP is going to be this, the inflation rate will be such, unemployment rate will be such and such. Right? Usually they're wrong. Matter of fact, there are people who judge, there are economists who estimate, who analyze forecasts. They've been doing that for quite a while now. How good are they? And every survey that's ever made of forecasts is they total flop-a-roo. In other words, as a matter of fact, if you simply take a ruler, this is time, right? 1972, 1980, something. If you take whatever statistic you're talking about, and it's been going like that, you simply draw a ruler and extrapolate trend, you do better than like high-speed computer models than econometric forecasting, okay? On the average. It's better. So, of course, you can't charge $500,000 for a corporation to take a ruler and draw a line, right? So, and they say, and the Wall Street Journal every once in a while talk about the perils of forecasting, and they had one, I think, about 6 months ago. And they're complaining about, gee, we can do pretty well when trends don't change. Essentially, they're taking a ruler. Okay? The problem is to predict when the trend goes down or up. That we haven't been able to attack that yet. So of course, that's the whole point. Obviously, the problem is the forecast changes in trend. You can't do it. Abysmal. And the forecasts are almost all the same in a very small range. The reason is because nobody wants to be different from the other guy. See, the thing is, it's like running in packs. If you're hired by a corporation, or they're forecasting companies, I forget the name of it, Data Resource Incorporated or something. Auto Exxon is the biggest one. You're hired by companies to forecast. If you're wrong, and most of them are wrong, if you're wrong in tax, they say, well, geez, the state of the art, we couldn't help it, right? Everybody was wrong. Only top economists were wrong. It's the way life is. But if you're way out of line, if you say, inflation would be 2%, the other guys say 8%, it's 8%, then you're finished. You're way out of line with everybody else, and therefore you're a turkey. So if you're all wrong together, no individual person can be blamed. So as a result, they're all interacting with each other all the time. They use the same models and all that, all wrong. So they wind up in very similar. The range of difference is very, very small. There's also one interesting problem with this thing is which troubled me for a while, is they have investment forecasters and all that. They're always wrong. Okay? There's investment newsletters which do forecasting of stocks and commodities and all that. Take, for example, Elliot Janeway, one of the most famous. I've been consistently wrong now for about 20 years. He's way wrong. Like he'll predict the Dow Jones average is going down from 1,000 to 500 in 6 months. Okay, 6 months will rise, it's still about 1,000. Why not everybody, why doesn't he lose all of his customers? It's an interesting question. It seems to be what the leftists call market failure, only in market forecasting business. Okay? So, there are various, so I was walking around asking people about this. People are in the business and so forth. They admitted this, that there's people make millions from consistently wrong forecasts. So what's up here? Well, it turns out, one answer is, you get new suckers coming in, but that's not really good enough. It's not very satisfying because the market's supposed to work so the better people wind up, as forecasters. Well, it turns out, and the answer that's given, which I think is correct, is essentially forecasting of that sort, especially not so much for businesses, but for individuals who buy market letters, is really a consumer good. It's not really the purpose is not to find out, not the forecast. That's why nobody checks up on the forecast. Nobody cares if you're wrong 6 months later. They enjoy reading the forecast. They enjoy listening to the guy say, there's going to be a depression in 6 months, there's going to be wild inflation in 6 months. That's the enjoyment. It's consumer good. Okay? This is the way. They don't care whether he's right or not. They just like to hear it.
It's printed material.
Yeah.
The same way as
Like enjoying going to a plum reader.
Exactly. It's like showmanship. If you notice, the guys who really make a lot of money, those who are great showmen, like this guy. What's his name? Joe. Right. Granville. Goes in a whole act, and so it's like showmanship, like watching entertainment. Essentially, what it is. And once I realized that, then my troubles were over. I realized it's not a market failure, it's just a crazy market. So that shows you. Economics is an art.
If I may say something,
yeah, sure.
That there is no great need for economists like there is no need for psychiatrists. People like to go to psychiatrists because they want to talk to somebody. they want to go to listen to economists in business because it is nice to hear. Nobody takes them seriously, especially, and but it's nice to have a long-range planning committee who plans for the next 20 years because it really doesn't matter what they do plan. The only difference I think in the Austrian economists and in the classical, basically British-based economists, the English, that the Austrian, being Austrians coming from Middle Europe, they don't take them so seriously. This is, and they don't have this scholastic seriousness, this academicism, and this is why they can come to that conclusion. And I think this is in the nature of the Austrian economy, that they don't take them seriously, and they see that there are an amount of uncertainty, that everything is relative. I am judging the values through my own judgment. There is no objective values. There are no definitions like goods which you are looking, because what is every item, the end, every item in that definition is relative through my own judgment. So they come to that final conclusion that economy, like the Austrians who invented the psychiatry, they came in also with the same conclusion. and it is exactly the same Viennese intellectual who in the Viennese coffee house had nothing else to do after playing chess to go into economic theory or to go into psychiatry. Some became Freud, the other became Mengele.
Great. But one thing is involved here also is that in Austrian theory, all economic laws are qualitative and not quantitative. Okay, we don't know we know that the price falls, more people will buy it. I mean, more will be purchased, and there will be a shortage. So there's no economic law that tells you how much the price will fall, what the shape of the demand curve is, what the price will be next week, and so forth. And that's so. And it's considered, and this is really gets to the real important philosophical point about Austrian method, which is, I was telling Mary Luke today, is we're much more in a minority nowadays. The free market, there's sort of a lot of free market economists. They're not as consistent as Austrians are, but they're more or less sort of semi-free market economists now. So the minority we're really in is methodological and philosophical. They can't stand the fact we say there's no such thing as quantitative laws. You can't predict the future quantitatively. You can't say the price of corn is going to be such and such in 6 weeks. 10 years from now or something, and so that's so those people who believe that you can have quantitative laws. You can say the demand curve is 0.3 times or whatever. Are really determinists. I mean, really think that you can sort of determine the future. There's no free will. Human action doesn't change. That people are like objects or molecules, and you can therefore chart them like you can chart molecules. After all, physics are quantitative laws, right? How the missile will fall as it's being shot. And these people tend to think, and sucked into modern scientific methods, so-called modern scientific method, sucked into the idea that people can be treated just like objects or molecules. They can then chart their course and determine everything they're going to do. So that's a key difference, and that's why Austrians are very much in the minority, and that reason alone. And they just can't. Most hard scientists, so to speak, in economics think they're hard scientists, want to get the prestige of physics and mathematics, which is real science. Can't stand it. They just go bananas. That's an important, very important point. Because now it's in so-called social sciences, or sciences of human action, Mises would put it. It's now considered the only real science is math and numbers and all that. That's what science is, because that's how you build the atom bomb or whatever it is. So that's and that still is very dominant profession. So that's a crucial point. By the way, I can't resist this. It has nothing to do with the point. But talking about old Vienna, Mises used to be full of great anecdotes about old Vienna. He was my mentor, and he was, of course, lived there for all his life until the 1930s. And so one time he was walking down the street. The logical positivists were then big in Vienna. They had their own cafe. The Austrians had their own cafe, and the economists had their own cafe. So Max Scheler, who was a distinguished German philosopher, was walking down the streets of Vienna with Mises, and he said, "Tell me, Lou, how is it? Why is it? What is there on the climate of Vienna that produces all these damn logical positivists?" Mises, with a typical shrug, said, "Well," he said, "after all, Max, there are 6 million people in Vienna, or 3 million people in Vienna, and only 12 logical positivists. It can't be the climate." Anyway, that's a typical Misesian anecdote. Okay, that's a one thing about forecasting. I can't resist this one too. Is the outside economists again always trying to say, criticizing the market, saying there should have been more steel produced, or there should have been less of that produced, more of that. And Mises' response was always, why don't they go and produce it? You know, if there's a market failure, there's a hole in the market. As entrepreneurs, they should go out there and fill the gap. And forecasting, he would say, well, people, for example, still claim they can predict the stock market or commodity market to a T. They have a system. But if they really could do it, they wouldn't be wasting their time producing newsletters. They'd be making $2 trillion. And one time I saw a TV show where a talk show panel or something. It was a panel of forecasters, of sports forecasters, people predicting baseball and basketball and all that. And the host was, talking about forecasting. Each of them putting out weekly letters. And finally, the talk show host, by accident, stumbled into a key question. He said, first he said, do you people bet on your own predictions? Oh, of course we do. We believe we convince wholeheartedly, and we bet on football. And you're usually right. Yes, we're right 98% of the time or something. And he says, then it hits the host. He says, well, in that case, you must be making millions of dollars. Why are you wasting your time why are you putting out these newsletters? And the guy who never heard the question before, the baseball forecaster or something, he said, well, I swear he said it. He said, well, I think it's important to give this information to the public. In other words, it's sort of an altruistic thing. You let the public know about this great information. So anyway, I thought it was a low point, a high point of forecasting theory. So, okay, I guess we can get to cost now, which we haven't really touched on enough before. There's a tremendous difference on cost theory between Austrian and everybody else, and Orthodox. The classical and neoclassical view is that in the long run, at least, prices tend to equal the cost of production. The theory is something like this. Well, if you have an industry with 8%, 20% profits, and another industry with 2% profits, people tend to move out of the industry with low profits or losses, move into the industry with high profits, and you get an equalization. So you wind up with more or less equal profit rates across the board, or zero profit rate, depending on what the theory you're dealing with. And prices then equaling the cost of production throughout. So that in the long run, the Marshall's famous two blades of a scissors. Well, it's true in the short run, which somehow they thought is being somehow unimportant. The real world is unimportant. It's true in day-to-day life. Utility determines price, etc. The supply, vertical supply line. But in the long run, it's really cost the determinant. In the long run, it's the famous metaphor of Alfred Marshall was that Alfred Marshall, by the way, heir of Smith and Ricardo, a neo-Ricardian. So it's the importance of Marshall was he brought back Ricardo after Ricardo was more or less dead in the water. In other words, his theory was more or less out. And Marshall brought it back with tremendous prestige. Professor at Cambridge University, writing from 1890 to whatever, 1820s, teens. So Marshall's famous metaphor was, well, it's like waves of the ocean. If you look at it in day-to-day prices, at the height of the wave, particular wave, but in the long run, the price is going to be the level of the ocean. The ocean is more important than the individual wave. So this sets the thing so that economists then get interested only in the long run, which never exists, for the reason we'll go into, and not in the short run or the immediate day-to-day thing, which of course does exist. In the long run, prices will be equal to the cost of production, or determined by the cost of production. Even worse than that. The Austrian view of cost is very different. The Austrian view is the only cost, there's no such thing as a real cost, some kind of objective cost which is out there, which somehow, where demand is ephemeral and you wind up at a cost level. Cost is what you give up to get something. Okay, in other words, in the case of me buying a newspaper, the price of the newspaper is the value to me. What I give up is 30 cents. The cost to me is 30 cents a newspaper. More importantly, if you get, you've also the choice of saying, where do I spend this evening or something? And you say, well, And that's why with this particular, I'll say next evening. You say, well, you have. I can go to movie A, movie B, go to party A, party B. I can read book A, book B. I have like 10 choices, let's say. And you decide to allocate your time to movie A. I think that's the most important on my value scale. You don't have to make a big thing out of it because you don't have to spend a lot of time at it, but you spend some time at it. Okay, I'm going to movie A. I think that looks pretty good. I like the director or whatever, star. The cost of going to movie A is you consider the prices of money, but you'll also consider it, probably more so, as what you give up for it, which is probably movie B, which you don't go to. You quote, sacrifice movie B and go to movie A instead. So the cost of movie A, going to movie A in that sense, is movie B. Okay. In other cases, like if the value scale is newspaper 30 cents, then the cost is 30 cents. In other words, the cost of doing something, of taking any action, making any sort of choice, is the highest value of what you give up. You give up 10 different things. The highest one is your cost. Okay, so to conclude from this, cost is subjective to each individual. Only the individual knows the cost of his action. Nobody else can know it objectively. No economist, no government bureau, no statistician knows your cost. Okay. I mean, you can see the guy went to a movie. You can say, well, he spent $5. That's not necessarily the cost, because he might have gone to the second movie down the corner, which was also $5. In other words, put it again here. Take a value scale. And movie A, movie B, and $5. In other words, you stay home, you don't spend any money at all. So in this situation, the cost of going to movie A is not the $5. It's higher than that. It's the second movie you give up.